The RTR Lite SM has been an absolute blast since we recently converted this to a Supermoto, and I've been taking it out a lot more often. But that doesn't mean we should ignore our little Mototec friend here. In fact, I think it's time to add a few things to this to make it even that much more of a Supermoto. Not that there's that much to improve. I actually like how this bike is as is, but with anything, I suppose there's always that thing you think of to improve or add upon, and after 6 months of riding with this current setup, I've come up with a list. And in all of these parts that I have planned here, I'm going to be addressing a lot of things like the suspension, the comfort, the protection, and most importantly, the looks. This is YouTube after all. Starting with suspension, and we're halfway there already because this already has an aftermarket rear shock. Kind of. By aftermarket, I mean this bike has stolen the stock shock from the Honda Grom. It sounds weird, but the spring rate is much better for a bike that's less than half the weight. Especially in a Supermoto setup, it's stiff and just a tiny bit shorter, so it makes the bike squat a little bit and the wheelbase is ever so slightly longer. Not enough to notice, but definitely better suited for the street than the soft and bouncy stock shock. It's really the front that needs to be addressed, and I'm not sure why, but the stock 60-volt forks are so soft and weak compared to the 48-volt. Not only are they shorter, but they genuinely can't even hold up their own weight. Every time I get on this and so much as think about using the front brake, it dives, and the spring is so soft it just stays down. It's like a serial monogamist, absolutely no rebound. Thankfully, the Mototec has the exact same fork size as the Tudio Soleil 01, and my new friend Kyle, aka Voltron Watts, kindly sent me these upgraded Tudio forks. I'm actually really excited to open these things up and see what they look like, because they've been sitting here just waiting to be opened for the last couple months. Oh, beautiful. You can get these from Voltron Watts in a couple different colors. You can get black, gold, and silver, or you can get this one, which is black with the oil slick inner tube. This looks absolutely fantastic and is gonna really go well with the all black frame. So let's get the front in the air, tear out the old forks, and slide in the new ones. Oh yeah, right away I can even tell without even having to ride this and just pushing down on the front that this is so much better. It's gonna provide so much stiffness, and I actually adjusted it so it's pushed up in the triple tree just a little bit, so that way it works with the squattiness of the front, so that way everything is just a little bit lower. And these forks not only came with fork guards, but an actual mounting bracket for the brake line, not just that simple piece of plastic that the Mototec's fork guard had. Although with all the hardware in this kit, it seems like it doesn't come with the 2 screws that are necessary to mount this thing up, so I need to make a trip to Home Depot at some point and get some really tiny drywall screws. But we're gonna move up the forks to the very next item, which improves both handling and comfort, that being the bars. I know this is a small bike, so the riding position is gonna be cramped no matter what I do, but even for a bike this size, these bars are so short. This new bar is still mini bike sized, but it's much wider than the stock one and will give me a little bit extra room for my long arms and better turn in, because the longer the bar, the easier it is to turn. These bars are from Tusk. They are cheap but effective, and it's a mini CR bend, which is very close to the CR high bend that I love oh so much and put on all my other bikes, so if I have a chance to put in a CR bend, I'm definitely going to. Not super hard to swap, but just a lot to take off the old bar before fully removing and clamping on the new one.
Looks like it's time for a video montage, because who's got the time as he works in the garage? That's right, we brought this back. Hope I don't catch much flack. At least I wrote this script. Wait, aren't those bars flipped?
Whoops.
There you go. It's another montage song made with AI, because I'm not creative, but I thought I'd try.
Ah, that's much better. Gives my arms actual room to move about the cabin. And as you can see, we've added a cherry on top of it. These are not strictly necessary. They're not even wraparounds that would actually protect the grips and the levers. It's purely aesthetic, but I'm okay with that. So now it's time for another set of controls. Foot pegs. So as far as I'm aware, there's not many options available, if any, for aftermarket foot pegs on the Mototec. However, I have heard some people adapt Sur-Ron style foot pegs to these bikes, and I happen to work with a manufacturer of foot pegs, a really good one, that makes Sur-Ron foot peg mounts. That being, of course, Motion Factory Racing. I've been working with them for quite a while, and I've been using their foot pegs on my other bikes for over a year now, and they are absolutely fantastic. So when I saw that they made Sur-Ron style ones, I reached out and they said, yeah, give them a try. Let's see if they work. So hopefully we can do something with this, and if you're interested in getting these, by the way, if it happens to work, then you can go to motionfactoryracing.com and use my code LEXDFOX on 10% of whatever you want over there. So good news, bad news on the foot pegs. Good news is I was able to mount them pretty easily. Bad news is it's not on the Mototec. I probably could have gotten them to work on this, honestly, but it would have required a lot more cutting and grinding to the mounts on this bike. The RTR, on the other hand, took these with no modifications whatsoever to the frame itself. As for the mounts, I did have to make some changes to them ever so slightly. I just had to shave off a little bit of the backstop just so it would line up properly, and I had to use a different sized pin, something a little smaller, which in this case I'm just using an M8 bolt. Works just fine. And I know these look a little weird, but we're not done just yet. You can add a platform that has some flex to it, which is awesome for street use, and I have this on my CRF. They slide onto the pin on the top and flex using the rubber bushing on the bottom, but I'm actually going to use a different platform that's solid mounted but uses the same exact mount, so you can change platforms with only a couple of wrenches. And now we have some seriously cool foot pegs. Honestly, these are overkill for this kind of bike, but they're too cool not to. But this is not an RTR video, so back to the Mototec. Next up is protection, and one of the things that you want to keep an eye out for, especially on a Supermoto build, is the protection of your axles and your axle nuts. It's very possible that with a bike like this, you might slide out and low side, and one of the points of contact that's going to be scraping along the asphalt is going to be that axle and that axle nut. So I have a set of these axle protectors. What this is a cap that screws on one side. It's going to capture the axle on one end and the axle nut on the other, and then it has this little plastic piece that screws on, and this is going to act as the point of contact. So if you were to low side this bike, this point would be damaged and nothing else. So that way you can keep your axle and your axle nut intact. Well, that was a pretty easy install overall, and good insurance on this. And you can see that there are two different style pucks. So the rear one has a little bit of a gap so that you can use a rear stand, which is actually really good in this case because this bike absolutely sucks on a center stand. And the front has a little bit more of a flatter, smaller profile just so that it can keep it from being damaged. Down to the last, but certainly not the least, because it's quite frankly the most important, the looks of this in the graphics. Now you can see that I've already changed this from the stock stuff, of course. I took a little bit of inspiration from my other Supermoto, of course. I want this to be kind of like the mini-me, but in certain aspects it's not the greatest. Like this Mototec badge right here was made a little bit too big and just kind of haphazardly thrown on there. So I'm going to make a few slight changes to this and see if we can't make this just look a little bit better and maybe a little bit more like a CRF. Wait, that's what you're talking about when you say graphics? That's it? Yes, that's it. You know what? Sometimes less is more. And like I said, this is kind of the mini-me version of the CRF, so just picture a CRF shrunken down and with all the colors inverted.
Well, it still feels like a Supermoto. Feels pretty solid, but I mean, performance-wise, I didn't really do anything to this. I didn't add any additional tuning. This was all handling and comfort and feel mods. And feel it does. It feels really good. I like the bars. It feels slightly higher and, most importantly, wider. Although it's not perfect. I mean, these handguards actually are not exactly sized for this. These are the kind of ones that you would use for full-size bikes, so it looks a little wonky on this. Not to mention that with the placement of these, it has to go in between the brake lever and the grip, and these brake levers are not long enough. They're not used to being that far away from your hands, so I'm right now just barely using one finger, and I could not get two on it realistically. So I think the handguards on this bike are gonna go. Oh, here's a little bump. Oh, that felt solid. I know that was just a tiny bump and it probably looked like nothing on video, but feeling-wise, well, yeah, it also felt like nothing. But before, I would definitely have felt that in the front because this thing would just dive and just stick down like there was no suspension whatsoever, like it was just kind of a rigid frame. Terrible. But now, if we tap the brakes, look at that, it barely dives. That's fantastic. And let's see how the axle protectors did. I'm not going to actually low side this because I've actually done that before just off camera. Why wasn't the camera running?
Oh no, I hit my ass.
And that was no fun. So we're just going to lean the bike over. Oh no, I low sided. And see where it's hitting. You can see there on the rear, right on the axle protector, exactly where we want it. And besides that, it's hitting the peg, of course. The grip, but that's because we don't have a wraparound. Again, that might have been something I should do. And here, a little hard to see, but if we were to turn the bike down a little bit, right on the ground there, axle protectors. I have a feeling it would do its job, and I hope I don't have to find out. But if I do, should be okay. And also with just replacing the forks, suspension-wise, we also changed the wheelbase a little bit. Because this is up a little higher, it's actually making the bike have a shorter wheelbase. And I mean, theoretically, that means that it's a little easier to handle because it's gonna be a little more darty. It doesn't have as much length to move. But realistically, I don't see there being that much of an effect. I think it's the kind of small details that only just a professional racer or someone that really knows their bike would actually feel. But theoretically, it's there, so I can say it's there.
So is this it? Maybe, maybe not. Like I said before, there's always something you think about afterwards to replace or add, and I'm sure that I missed something. So let me know in the comments below what I missed, and maybe we'll do a 3.0. Huge thanks in this build to Voltron Watts for the forks up front and Motion Factory Racing for the foot pegs down below. Links to these as well as everything else in this build in the description. See you next time.
Looks like it's time